And we're day 23, continuing about falling in love with the land of Israel so that we all run there. The second category of qualities has much subdivision as well. For example, death in Eretz Israel is not carried out by an angel of death. Rather, it is done by means of the holy angels. If you die in Eretz Israel, you know bad angels, you have a holy angels who comes to take you. How great is that? This angel, although stemming from the aspect of chesed, gets enclosed in gvura in order to remove the soul from the person. This is likened to an animal being ritually slaughtered in a kosher manner with a perfectly smooth blade, rendering the person pure. This is opposed to death in Chutz La'aretz, where death is meted out by Samael with a blemished and defective blade, rendering the person invalid. Boo! For one who dies outside of the land of Israel, his soul at the time of its departure from the body is enclosed by the forces of Chutz La'aretz, thus being contaminated. The soul must exert tremendous effort just to reach the gates of heaven. There it is purified from its contamination in order that it should be allowed to ascend. We don't realize the impact it has when we're outside the land of Israel. Just dying, just for the soul, the soul has to go through that process. The body of those buried in Chutz La'aretz must roll underground from the place of burial until Eretz Israel in order to arise at the time of the resurrection of the dead. With each border he must pass, he's harassed and tormented by the forces of each country. So the further you are from Eretz Israel, the more countries you have to go through under the earth, so to speak, because those are kind of path spiritual lines, right? And the more countries you have, the more each angel of that country is gonna try to prevent you from going. It contaminates you. So you arrive in Eretz Israel, you're full of all those countries' effect. Upon this, the sages write, there is no comparison to one who is absorbed into Eretz Israel while alive as opposed to after death. Again, to expound upon the third category of qualities of Eretz Israel, there are many distinctions to be made. Here are a few. The actual differences and specifics each soul will experience during that rolling from Chutz La'aretz. Number two, the fact that the resurrection of the dead in Eretz Israel will precede that of those buried in Chutz La'aretz. And the soul return to visit their bodies on Shabbat and the new moons, as mentioned in the Zohar 1:81a and b. So the soul returns to visit their bodies on Shabbat and new moons. Rosh Chodesh, that's why people go pray at the cemetery during especially new moons. We don't go on Shabbat usually, but we go on new moons. Rosh Chodesh. For those buried outside Eretz Israel, the neshama must pass through the contaminated airspace of Chutz La'aretz to reach its body. This causes much distress to both body and soul. The above advantage are all attained by one who was born in Eretz Israel and never left. He who ascended to Eretz Israel in his youth has nearly all of them. A reduction of those advantages exists only because he was born into foreign soul. So just making a baby in Eretz Israel is like a tremendous merit. Yet one who grew up outside the land and then came doesn't even receive those benefits. That is true even if he was able to perform some of the mitzvot of the land. He who enters the land at an advanced age and passes on will basically benefit from the last two categories. Better than nothing, right? Never too late. One whose bones are buried from his grave abroad and brought to Eretz Israel benefits only from the third category, namely the resurrection and the ease of visitation of the neshama, which is still a big thing. But again, why make it harder for us? The more we show love for the land, the more we show that we love God, the more we mesirus nefesh for that, the more the soul is being taken care of. Lastly, he who is brought as a corpse to Eretz Israel has an additional advantage, for the soil of the land is likened to the soil of the altar, for man was created from the place of his atonement. For us Jews, who were definitely created from this soil, it is befitting to return to the holy place from where we were hewn. Yet the Zohar, Nacharemos 72, says something quite different. Rabbi Yehuda says anyone who did not merit to dwell in his chamber in the Holy Land and then he dies, only then does he arrive upon him. It is written, "The place of my heritage you have made an abomination." For his soul remains under the authority of the foreign land, while only his body comes into the authority of the Holy Land. It is as if he has made the holy profane and the profane holy. From the above Zohar, it seems that one would be prohibited from bringing his corpse to Eretz Israel for burial. We don't hold by that, but yet further the Zohar states in Teruma 141b that God made a healing for the land. For when that body brought from Chutz La'aretz has decomposed, God blows a wind to extricate from the land that contaminated spirit, for he has mercy on his land. This basically prevents the contaminated spirit from entering the land. In other words, the body gets purified by God's mercy for the purity of the land. So we conclude the law is known that if the soil of Eretz Israel is taken out of its boundaries, the legal status of that soil is foreign soil. No way, I didn't even read it, because I take sometimes a stone from Israel. Soil from Chutz La'aretz that is brought into Eretz Israel is considered the soil of Eretz Israel. That is the mystery of the converts, of Gerim. Woohoo! Deep stuff here. Therefore, one who arrives in Eretz Israel, why not yet decompose? His benefits are great. Yet if one leaves Eretz Israel after death, it is inversely related. That was the reason for our father Yaakov commanding that he be brought back to Eretz Israel immediately after his death. I'm trying to think about the ger, what's happening. I think it's speaking about the body and the soul of the ger. That one was tameh, one is the soul becomes tahor. I don't know, something in there. I have to think more about it to be able to explain it. But we see that that the tremendous advantage in being in Israel, and we don't understand what we're missing. That's really what's happening. We don't understand the great advantage. So may we take those words to heart and fall in love with the land of Israel and eventually get there. Baruch Adonai L'olam. Amen. Amen.